Welcome to Mysteries to Die For and this toe tag. I am TG Wolff and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is normally a podcast where we combine storytelling with Jack's original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. Today is a bonus episode that we call a toe tag. It's the first chapter from a fresh release in the mystery, crime, and thriller genre. And today's featured release is The Conductor by Eva Shaw. Okay, we are not going to do the first chapter today, but we are going to do the fifth. And the reason is this really sets you up best for understanding the mystery part of it. A few things you need to know before we get started here. First, our detective is Beatrix Patterson. She is a psychiatrist, but she also does consulting for the Santa Barbara Police Department. Our dead body today is Grayson Welsh. He is the vice president of Union Pacific Railroad, and he was found in his driveway wearing only a robe. Another thing is that Beatrix's friend Sam, who works on the railroad, got jumped on his way into work this morning, and in addition to getting banged up, he was arrested for it. So Beatrix is now at the police station, and she's talking with a friend of hers and co-workers, Detective Stella Rodriguez. So let's get going then with Chapter 5. Wait, Welsh was shot and a tranquilizer ended his life? Beatrix's mind was already in the investigation, knowing that the detective would not have made her privy to the details unless she was about to be hired as a police consultant again. That'd be too easy. Detective Rain's conjecture is that Mr. Welsh was left paralyzed. He was, it seems, outdoors on his driveway when the assault happened, and Miss Dubois, his neighbor, discovered him lying on the pavement in his robe and slippers, newspaper clutched in his hand. Not to be indelicate, but no pajamas? Beatrice asked gingerly. Nope, and everything was out for the world and your grandmother to notice. Not something I care to see again with his rotund and hairy body exposed. The responding officer was new, or she'd have at least covered the victim with the blanket from the trunk of her patrol car. Stella shook her head as if attempting to shake away the image. What then was the cause of the fatality? Beatrix asked. Good question. Heart condition? He was a smoker, Mrs. Welsh told us, and when I arrived on the scene with the other two officers, he smelled heavily of cigar smoke. He was seriously obese, and his face was puffy, broken capillaries on his bulbous nose and chunky cheeks. I'd guess it was from alcohol addiction. He would have been 50 next month. Why are you sharing this with me, Stella? Beatrix pressed. I am apologizing first. I know baby Birdie is the love of your family life, and I know what I'm asking has the potential to be dangerous. Just get on with it, please, and let me say no if I'm uncomfortable with the request. This isn't as simple as interviewing the family and watching their facial expressions to see if they're lying like you've helped us with in the past, or grilling anyone who disagreed with Mr. Welch's business ethics, which I've heard were malleable depending on what he wanted or thought he had to achieve. According to another cop who recently pulled the deceased over for drunk driving on the San Marcos Pass, crazy to even think about, the man was a bully. Started a fist fight, if you can imagine, with the officer, midday and on a blind curve, no less. Stella laughed as she shook her head in obvious dismay. From the little that I've been told, the current Mrs. Welsh is one of those free spirits who lives half the time in that questionable group of folks, nature, boys and girls, up in the hill. Current? Beatrice asked. You don't keep up with our local newspaper gossip column, do you, Beatrix? Yes, Kay Welsh, age 27, according to the Department of Motor Vehicles, is wife number 5. I dug up a wedding announcement published last June, and it said that the future Mrs. Welsh had at one time been a stenographer for the Union Pacific Railroad in L.A., and that she last worked with some Hollywood's biggest names. Didn't mention any of the movies that she'd been in, or that she actually was an actress. Might be a stagehand for all we know from the newspaper. In the newspaper photo, she was pretty, towering over the chunky Mr. Welsh's frame. Even when I met her at the scene, she was just one of those women who looks together. You know what I mean? Beatrix thought of the age difference and background of the couple, including that there had been 4 previous Mrs. Welshes. Stella flipped past another page of notes in the small notebook. She's a member of that group that resides on Mountain Drive. I've heard there are dozens more men than women, boys, girls, and plenty of babies. We've received a score of irate and cranky complaints at the station from folks who think we should run these free thinkers out of the county. Casually, and out of curiosity, Beatrix had been following the unique community that was quickly becoming a legend throughout the West, a group of what the city called misfits and rebels, often accompanied by explicatives. The community started with tents and yurts, and then, right after the war, began building shelters on steep hillsides above Santa Barbara Right. Some members were lost souls, wanderers, and others were returning vets, she'd learned, who were disenchanted with the economy, capitalism, all things to do with the government, the expensive housing market, dead-end jobs, and probably the price of coffee in Brazil, was their platform for being disenchanted with society. These were folks who felt marginalized and opposed to the mores of conservative society, and the flock was growing. The combination of a landscape of rare and rugged beauty and freedom from convention allowed the blossoming of a lifestyle that was quickly becoming utopia for some and a warning of ballooning debauchery to the straight-laced citizens of the city. There were, supposedly, naked rituals, communal hot baths, groups sitting in circles, and, horror of all horrors, playing guitars, singing songs, and dancing. Drinking and drugs? Beatrix wondered. But the article didn't say anything about that. Sounds like the group is rather reminiscent of a modern-day vagabonds, she thought, recalling a newspaper interview with the mayor and a few business executives complaining of rude and rowdy festivals and uninhibited sexuality with multiple partners. At the same time, the mayor had said. Well, that made Beatrix all the more intrigued, especially as she recollected that one prominent citizen who'd been interviewed was Grayson Welsh. But Grayson Welsh was hotly vocal about the cult and all its depravity, and yet his wife is a member? She asked. Stella shook her head. I've given up trying to understand the dynamics of married couples. An unfaithful spouse? Beatrix said. A love triangle? A public affair and somehow connected to the union? Beatrix thought back to the essay on the movement of freethinkers and those who wanted to live off the grid and were rebelling against society. The essay was a bit hazy on their manifesto, and still, she could have shared it verbatim. It had read, "From the beginning, men and women wore their hair long and had highly tanned skin from reverence of nature and the sun. They preferred simple clothing when they wore it. Author Jack Kerouac mentioned them on the On the Road, and now, while he was traveling through Los Angeles in 1947, he'd see, quote, an occasional nature boy saint in beard and sandals, unquote." Beatrix finished processing her thoughts, and then it clicked. You want me to go undercover with the railroad and find out who might have hated Welsh enough to stun him, kill him, and leave him naked in the driveway. And why? What about the wife in Mountain Drive? Will you have someone follow her there or infiltrate the community? Geez, Beatrix, Stella said, you're like 100 miles ahead of my words, that I haven't even formed into thoughts to convince you to do this. I was merely, dangerous as it would be, merely going to have you hang out at the depot and ask some questions. I had thought, perhaps, you could be hired by the Welsh estate as a maid to get the scoop on the family's inner workings. Sending you to the depravity of Mountain Drive? No. Then she chuckled. I plan to do that myself, she said, rubbing the palms of her hands together. As Thomas would say, that's cheeky of you. Oh, bad joke, Stella said. My captain at SBPD would have a heart attack if he thought I was going to join the commune. And my parents? She laughed, one of those contagious ones that was big and loud, and then she continued, I'm nearly 40, and you know what? I don't even talk shop when I'm at their house, even though Dad was a beat cop in San Diego his entire career. They still think of me as their baby girl, and that's Dad's nickname for me. I'm the oddball daughter of my big Hispanic family. I've been trying to find a way to tell them about Milton Westchester III, my pretty serious beau. Oh, you've moved to pretty serious, Beatrice asked. Why the secrecy, Stella? Well, my family came from Mexico City in the late 1890s. Migrant workers. Milton wasn't born yet, of course, but his father and grandfather were strong leaders of the AFL who hired the muscle to keep foreign workers, us Mexicans, blacks, and Asians, out. Dad told us stories about being roughed up. I know they'll think that Milt agrees with his family, with whom he's not close to due to his religious convictions, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. He's attending seminary, right? You're dating an almost priest? Isn't that about as scandalous as it gets? Beatrice asked. He's not going to join the priesthood, Beatrix, and you know that perfectly well. He wants to teach at Bishop Garcia Diego High School next year, if they hire him. The war threw a monkey wrench into his plans to play professional baseball, as did the shrapnel in his shoulder he got thanks to the Nazi bomb when he was fighting in France. It'll work out, my friend. I'm really happy for you and Milt. Beatrix squeezed the detective's hand and knew that her parents were not going to be over the moon about their only daughter marrying into a family that had violently opposed their uncles, fathers, and brothers. You'll hold my hand when I introduce my parents to this tall, skinny, really white guy, Stella pleaded. I'll tell you what, Beatrix said, smiling at her friend. Let's get the clans together at our house next week for a party, and you can start referring to him as your guy, boyfriend, beau, whatever. Yeah, Stella said. That could work. Stave off World War III with me in the middle. You'll frisk Dad at the door, right? Just in case he brings a gun. Okay, we gotta get off my love life and back to Mountain Drive and why I pulled you into this secret conversation. Imagine that they'd go crazy if they knew I love Milton and then found out I was cavorting with wackos on Mountain Drive. They'd drag me home by the ears, probably have our priest do an exorcism before letting me pass the front porch. Kidding, but you've met them. Let's not discount going undercover, Beatrix said. It's a viable option, but I have another idea. I need to be hired by the railroad here in the city. I need to become invisible so I can nose about, ask questions, and listen. That's the best way to find out why this made-up strike and the rumors of more violence are surfacing. Can't you just waltz into the station and pretend you're writing an article for the newspaper or something? Stella asked. Beatrix smoothed her hands over the thighs of her trousers. No, the railroad is strictly a male domain, and I'm far too straightforward to try feminine allure. Does your Milt have connections with the labor union, discreet and all? Must I implicate him? Stella asked. Oh, not at all. He's probably a terrible liar with all the religious training and such. But what if I pose as a conductor in training? Beatrice suggested. Fat chance, Beatrix. They never let a woman be a conductor. It might have worked during the war when our guys were overseas. Now, as we both know, us women are expected to return to our roles as domestic goddesses, breeding and keeping the kitchen clean. The few gals that are at the station sell tickets, clean the toilets, scrub gum from under the wooden benches, and mop grimy floors. Beatrix jumped up from the bench. I need to talk with Sam Conrad. He'll want to help. About a month ago, Sam, Joe, and the kids were having dinner with us when he talked about this apprenticeship program for returning vets to encourage them to learn a rail trade. That could work. Sam will be straight with me, especially when I tell him why I'm doing it. Beatrix, who is going to believe you're a man with your beautiful long auburn hair? Besides, you have a girly figure, my friend. The detective's hair was a mass of crinkly back curls, and she ran her hand through it, pulling at a lock of her own hair. "This I gotta see." Beatrix patted her waist. "Maybe a sofa cushion will make my bust look, well, less chesty. Come by the house tomorrow afternoon. By then I should have all the props needed. There are a few wrinkles that could ruin the plan, but I should be able to work them out." "I hope that one of the wrinkles is telling your husband. I'm no expert on men, although Milton is close to helping me learn, but I've heard that they feel pretty protective when their wives dive into danger where someone else has already been murdered." Beatrix thought of Thomas, and yes, he was one of those wrinkles. "Who told you that?" "Might have been my colleague, Detective Maria Davies, who went undercover as a hooker." "Or was that you, Beatrix? Didn't you tell me some version of that and how Thomas nearly went berserk, panic-stricken with worry once when you were kidnapped by Nazi sympathizers in New Orleans? Or was it when you exposed a crazed and murdering entertainer? Or unscrambling that evil cult leader who tried to steal your man? And then there was our last caper, dealing with war criminals." "Point taken," Beatrix said. "By the way, any chance that Maria might be able to get a job in the railroad depot so I could have a contact there?" Beatrice asked. "Now that's a winning idea. She was just saying this morning that shuffling paperwork was not her cup of Earl Grey," Stella answered. The two said goodbye, and Beatrice briskly walked to the Conrad home on Garden Street, blocks from City Hall. Beatrix headed to the back garden after hearing Sam and a child's laughter. Sam was pushing ever-energetic Gracie on the rope swing that hung from an ancient California oak tree limb. Sammy, their 6-year-old, was at school for another hour, and the twins, Jefferson and Jackson, were nowhere to be seen. Sam shouted hello and waved a greeting as Beatrice opened the waist-high white picket gate to the backyard. Gracie screamed in delight and flung herself from the screen when it was at least 5 feet off the grass, tumbling twice and finally throwing her tiny self into Beatrix's outstretched arms. "Gracie, darling, that was unsafe," Beatrix chided. "I like to fly through the air like Superman, right, Daddy?" The little girl hugged Beatrix. She kissed the child's cheeks, fearing that, with Gracie as a role model, when Bertie was that age, she'd probably do the same. "Sam, this is why I'll have gray hair raising my children." "Yup, look at mine already. That girl does that all the time. Bounces pretty well." He gave Beatrix a one-armed hug. "Kids are great. You and Tom need more. I'd have 9 if Joe let us, but don't tell her that." "That's the plan for us, not you, I suppose." Beatrix twisted the 5 slim gold bangles that Thomas had bought her, which also represented good luck in his Chinese heritage. The two had a quiet moment, watching Gracie do cartwheels and somersaults on the grass. "Your face looks sore, Sam. Know what you're going to tell Sammy when he comes home from school?" "The truth. What else is there? Sammy is going to grow up, I pray, in a world where he'll be free of this kind of hatred, but I can't shelter the boy. I refuse to do that, but I won't scare him either." "Now, please, come sit in the shade. Joe's putting the twins down." The big man's face grew somber, and the bruises looked nasty. "Beatrix, I've been through some harsh times growing up in South Central LA. The dark days of the railroad laying track with no safeguards and little money for hazardous work. Some worse during my time in the South Pacific with the Corps of Engineers, building bridges that the Japanese bombed out as soon as they were done. Back then, maybe because I was younger, I knew I'd survive. Today, I thought my luck had come to an end. Don't know who hired those thugs, but they were out for my blood. For a short time," he whispered, "I feared I would never see Joe or the babies again. I cannot thank you enough, or never will forget you or Mr. Brockman for bringing in the cavalry. Miss Goldman said there'll be an arraignment where the judge looks into the charges. She insists that this was not my fault after hearing how I was provoked. And there are witnesses, too." "That's a huge relief," Beatrix said. It's still messy and doesn't answer who hired the hoodlums. Sam, I don't mind if you tell Joe everything we'll talk about, as you would anyway. The police are really taking this incident and others, accidents, things thrown on track, dangerous mishaps like tons of freight not being tied down properly, they're taking them seriously. Yeah, Sam said. At first, I chalked it up to the new crews, the veterans that are being hired as soon as they hit town. Is it more? Beatrice asked. A heck of a lot more. You know my friend, Detective Stella Rodriguez? She's been asked by the mayor and chief of police to solve this, and that starts by discovering who and what's behind it. The police believe the minor riot led by the thugs that cornered you is somehow connected to the death of the railroad vice president, Grayson Welsh. Welsh? The bigwig? Dead? I don't see it, but I'm not good at solving mysteries. I met Welsh a few times, and he was always pompous and self-important prig, but I always had the feeling it was a bluff. Bullies, and I've met my share, are that way. Beatrix took a breath, knowing that she could and must trust Sam. The police want me to go undercover as an employee and see what I can find out. Talk, listen, watch. Well, you'll never hear anything as a ticket seller or if you scrub floors, Sam said. The guys I work with are tight with each other. Newcomers, especially pretty gals like you, are to flirt with and maybe more, but not to share rumors or secrets with. That's why I'm here, Beatrix said. You mentioned a pilot program where returning vets, especially those who'd been injured in battle, are hired as apprentices and mentored into a full-time job. You said other cities are considering this as soldiers, sailors, and Marines trickle back into society. Sam started to rub his forehead and then flinched when his finger met the gash that had been stitched. He pulled his hand off his face and said, "You're not big enough to be in the engine room with me, Beatrix." He flexed his biceps, and they bulged. She nodded. I probably couldn't hold onto the controls, Sam. I would need a disguise. Like I said, I would become a conductor in training. Women can't hold those jobs, he said. It's the law. She smiled. All worked out. Just get me hired. You can pull strings and get me a conductor's uniform for someone about my size. Mr. Rosenbaum, the tailor on State Street, can make alterations. I'll do the rest. Sam looked at his friend and shook his head. You know this is crazy, right? Sometimes we have to accept that crazy is the best option. If you were my sister, I'd forbid this, Sam said. But I've known you since I came back from the war. Know you care, know you're worried. This small squabble could be a flashpoint for troubles that could cripple the nation again, like in 1946. Now, I'm just scared silly that when Tom finds out, he'll become more alarmed than usual when you go out to solve the crime. You've told Tom, right? Not yet, she said. I'll explain the situation. He'll understand. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for putting yourself out there for the good of others, to help the union get fair wages, pay medical bills, and put money toward a retirement fund. And even more, better safety. Joe walked down the cement steps from the kitchen. I don't like what I'm seeing, like you're plotting to overthrow the galaxy, heads close together and whispering. She sat next to her husband and smoothed the hair on his bare forearm. I've got to run, Joe. Beatrix hugged her friend. Sam will explain. No worrying, honey. You just take care of Sam and the family. Love you. Joe grabbed Beatrix's hand, and the grip was tight. She kissed it. Be careful. I don't think I'm going to like what is going to happen. She released Beatrix's fingers and then bent over Sam, touching his stitched forehead. Her face clouded with fear. Alrighty, so that is the 5th chapter of The Conductor. So chapters 1 through 4, you get to see the what happens to Sam, how much trouble he gets into, and how Beatrix works to get him out of jail. So again, picking up in chapter 5, because that is where we first really learn about Welsh's death and what Beatrix is being asked to do. So now for the review. So The Conductor is an amateur sleuth mystery. It's 1948, and Dr. Beatrix Patterson is a psychiatrist and occasional consultant to the Santa Barbara police. She's called in to investigate the death of railroad executive Grayson Welsh. Described as a bully with wandering hands, there's no shortage of people he's crossed words with. Thought to be connected to the railroad union, Bee goes undercover as a conductor to suss out motives and suspects. She uncovers persons of interest in a commune reputed for social liberties, conflicting interests with other conductors, and Welsh's own private life. Bottom line, The Conductor is for you if you like historical mysteries set against a backdrop of social change of post-World War II. All right, so a little bit more of a synopsis here. Welsh, as you know, is the vice president of the Union Pacific Railroad, and he's died under odd circumstances. He's in his driveway, he's wearing only a robe, and he's shot with an animal tranquilizer. So while the coroner is investigating how a tranquilizer could have led to death, Bee is asked to look into the connections. There's no way to do that from the outside, so she cuts her hair and dons a tailored uniform to become Charles Chuck George, a wounded veteran who joined the apprentice program. And while she infiltrates Union ranks, her husband and renowned scientist, Dr. Thomas Link, does the same with the free living group on the mountain. So The Conductor is a sophisticated and complex mystery with multiple storylines. So I'm just going to give you sort of an overview of those. So Sam Conrad, who you met, he's been assaulted and arrested and now for causing a fight. So he's working through the whole criminal system. Another friend of Bee's, John Brockman, he's a wealthy man who is in danger of being publicly denounced as a communist, which would ruin him and everything that he's trying to do. At the same time, Thomas is preparing for a visit from Albert Einstein, who is attempting to draw Thomas out of California back to New Jersey. Then there's a faction of the KKK that is recruiting in California and trying to set up a branch. So each of these stories is really interesting in its own way, and overall does a very nice job of weaving historical characters and events in with fictional ones. In the end, just because of the sheer number of these stories, it is a bigger portion of the overall book than Welsh's death. It doesn't take away, it's just they become much more equally weighted, so it's not a mystery and then these other ones. They're pretty much fairly evenly weighted. The setting of Santa Barbara in 1948 is woven through the story without feeling like a history lesson. The culture of the times, like between men and women, whites and blacks, communists and racists, gives the reader a sense of how American life was evolving and changing in the post-World War II period. Little things added some really nice flavor, such as a description of the station wagon that Bee and Thomas own, and the toys that their daughter plays with. So let's talk about Beatrix as our hero. She's determined, and she is not intimidated by ugly circumstances around her. Once she accepts the assignment to investigate, she doesn't shy away from the uncomfortable situations that comes from being a woman undercover in a man's world. I do think the one place she differs from other amateur sleuths is that her style is more an observer than a catalyst. While she's on the railroad, she's more watching, she's more listening. She's not necessarily rummaging through, packages or crates or other things, just as an example. When we're standing at the back and looking to the front, the logic of the individual storylines do stand up, with the actions of the bad guys being consistent with their goals. Bee is ultimately able to bring resolution to the sequence of events that led to Welsh's death because she has that insight that comes from these different storylines. If she wasn't involved in some of the other ones, she wouldn't have the tools that she needs to understand what did happen to Welsh. So this is the fourth book in the Beatrix Patterson mystery series, and it's the first one that I've read. The main mystery is absolutely independent and stands alone. The characters that surround Beatrix, they are from the previous books, and you can tell just by the way they relate to each other that there's an established relationship. So I did not have a problem picking up the series with this book. I do think I would have had more insight and maybe been more vested had I read the earlier books first. So in this case, I would put reading the first books in the nice to have category. Those books are, in order, The Seer, The Finder, and The Pursuer. The Conductor is a recommended read for mystery lovers who especially enjoy post-World War II era and stories set against the backdrops of American culture, specifically in the 1940s. There is a lot to enjoy about The Conductor, and a lot that'll keep you guessing. The Conductor was released from Torch Flame and is promoted by Partners in Crime Tours and is available on Amazon and other book retailers. Now let me introduce you to our author, Eva Shaw. Eva always loved a good mystery, and when she took a break from her successful ghostwriting career, it was a mysterious idea that turned into The Seer, Book 1. She reads, breathes, and watches and thrives on mysteries. Hey, I think we might be related, and is often shocked when the characters do a better job of plotting the book than she could. When not writing, she's kept on her toes thanks to her silly and rambunctious Welsh Terrier companion, Coco Rose. She and Coco live near the beach in Carlsbad, California. Wondering what to read after you finish The Conductor? Partners in Crime Tours is your ultimate destination for all things mystery, crime, thriller, and cozy. Since 2011, they've been working to fill bookshelves with gripping and heart-pounding reads. Discover new mystery series and connections with other fans with PICT. Look up PICT Tours on the web or your favorite social media. Links are in the show notes. And authors. Whether you're looking to promote your latest thriller, discover a new mystery series, or connect with fellow fans, PICT has you covered. Check out their promotion options that come with the personal attention of a dedicated coordinator. So that wraps up this week's Toe Tag. Come back next week for the second half of Have You Seen This Body? By me, TG Wolff. Thank you, everyone, and Jack, take us out.